What's in the box?
Hello, welcome to episode 4 of What's in the Box. Am I
Hello.
allowed to say that?
Oh, I think if we don't say the name of the film, we're kind of be screwed, aren't we? Because we'll have to go. And tonight's film is. Yeah, I think you've got to say it.
Well, this one is my personal favourite, and I know it's pretty much yours as well.
Yeah.
Welcome to Fight Club.
Hi, I am Tyler's Durden, and opposite me is Jack's complete lack of surprise.
Yep. I'm one of Jack's books.
It kind of sums up the week that's been so far. So yeah, Fight Club, flipping heck. This is one of these ones where you wonder where you start with Fight Club. So I'll just do a little bit of, my usual blurb at the start. So Fight Club 1999, just on the cusp of turning into the millennium. And I think that shows in some of the subject matter that's covered in it. I'll read what IMDb says is the synopsis of the film and see how close it isn't. An insomniac office worker and a devil-may-care soap maker form an underground fight club that evolves into much more. That's not really the film, is it?
Two gentlemen have fisticuffs.
Yes, and they follow the Queensberry rules, don't you know? Yeah. I think if
IMDb does it a complete disservice.
I think if I'd read that, if I hadn't seen the trailer and didn't know who was in it, and I'd read that, I wouldn't watch the film.
No.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the problem for Fight Club was that they didn't know how to market it. I think Fincher and his crew knew how to market it, but the was it New Line that released it?
20th Century.
20th Century, yeah. Absolutely crapped themselves when it came to releasing this. So this is Fincher's fourth film. In my opinion, it's Fincher's funniest film. And that is elements of very dark humor, but very blatant humor as well.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think for me, this film is pinned into a time when 19 going 20, just going into university. So it was that millennium time. But it was that there was a lot of change going on. I mean, for the UK, for example, we were going through sort of Britpops.
Britpox. That's the new measles, is it? Yeah.
That's the new measles. You're sort of exiting Britpop. You're on the anticlimax of that. There is a disillusionment. There is a disenfranchisement of sorts. Naomi Klein's big book at the time, No Logo, came out. There was a pushback against big corp, big brand. There was this real churn of everything going on. I think Fight Club is that perfect film for the perfect time. It just summed everything up so beautifully about the anti-corporate, anti-establishment, burn it all to the ground. You've met me at a very strange point in my life. It's everything that's there perfectly reflects the time in a film.
And it did it with the perfect wraparound of music, of fashion. The way Tyler Durden dresses is supposed to be anti-fashion, but it was incredibly fashionable 5 seconds after the film came out. And it did it with that, not only that, but this ultra violence. We both rewatched it again last night, and I think we both found some of the violence in there a lot more in your face than we remembered.
It was a lot more in your face than I remember it being. When it first started, I think the best way to describe it is that first fight between Brad Pitt and Ed Norton is that's reality. That is how a fight is.
Yeah.
It's not how you see it on screen with Henry Cavill walking in and going with his fists, and it's not that loading up the guns.
Yeah,
it is that proper going in for a punch, completely mishitting, twatting him in the ear, and then just scrapping around like two idiots. That's proper fighting. But when it moves to the basement, it takes on a whole new level. And I've watched that film a lot. I don't know why it's slightly Michael Caine there. I've watched that film a lot.
It's okay. I'm surprised he didn't turn up in the film and say, I can take you. I really can.
You punched me in the fucking ear. But when it moves to the basement, and particularly that Jared Leto scene.
Oh, that is awful.
It's uncomfortable as hell. It's horrible. And I don't remember it being that harsh.
Yeah, and
I remember it being a horrible watch, but watching it again last night, I was like, this hurt. This is not. I don't want to be watching this. This is not nice. Which is what it's meant to be.
Yeah, there's a couple of seconds cut out of that version as well, from that fight scene, which I've got on an American disc somewhere, and it just makes it even more uncomfortable. That continuous.
I had that same disc.
Yeah, smack, thwack, smack, thwack, smack. Unrelenting, and at the end he says, I wanted to destroy something beautiful.
That's all it is.
And
it's horrific. And when you see him later on and you see the impact of that damage, it just, I looked at him and went, you're Beast from Beauty and the Beast. It has that sort of makeup done to it to make him look like the Beast. Very clever little nod there. But the violence was really, it unsettled me last night, and I've watched that film a lot.
I think the violence was perhaps one of the ways that the film got misunderstood, because I know a lot of people when the film came out said, "Oh, it's just a film about men beating each other up," and it's not. That's almost a side product of what the film is about. Maybe the Fight Club itself introduces the people together, brings them together as a society, but it's not a film about fighting. It's a film about nihilism. It's a film about anarchy, about anti-corporatization, as you said before. Before we jump too far past beating Angel up, though, so it opens with Edward Norton's unnamed character as an insomniac. He's a loss adjuster for an insurance company, which is, there's some pretty unpleasant bits about that as well. And this is where Fincher really starts to flex his directorial muscles, that as Edward Norton is talking about having insomnia, whether he's in the office or whether he's talking to the ER doctor, we've got these subliminal flashes of Tyler Durden, or Brad Pitt. Those are the moments in Edward Norton's mind when, and spoilers, if you don't know the end of this film, tough.
Why are you listening to this?
You've got no excuse for not having seen this film by now. There's no excuse. Those are the moments of Tyler's birth. So similar to The Game, where we had, that rebirth at the end of that, we've got these moments of stress where Edward Norton's mind is fracturing and Tyler Durden starts to come out. I think that's really clever, and I know a lot.
A
lot of people didn't.
It's those little bookmarks, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just. I don't know if it's the version I have now, but I noticed it, or I'm more attuned to it. But it was very prominent last night. Even the bits with Marla and things like that, and he just pops up.
Yeah,
you catch it. I caught two more instances of Tyler appearing that I haven't seen before.
It'd be interesting to know how many there are, because I think I've caught 5 so far. But it would be interesting.
Well, there's even the subliminal parts where he appears as a waiter in the video.
Yeah.
So there's little real snippets of Tyler Durden, which you sort of think, well, did he pick him from there? Is it subliminal that's where he's picked the look of the guy? Yeah. So very cleverly done.
Yeah. So on a flight home from doing a loss adjustment exercise, Edward Norton bumps into Tyler Durden, literally on a plane. Is it the ass or the crotch? As they pass on the aisle. Really good line, that. Tyler introduces himself as a soap salesman, which leads to one of the most disgusting scenes in the film, or in or in any film for the past 20 or 30. It just makes me go every time I see that. And it's funny because once you've seen the film, you know who Tyler is, but you feel that there's a bond being created there. First time you watch it, when you don't know the end, you can see these two people starting to bond. Yeah. Edward Norton's like this little mouse, oh, love me. And Tyler Durden's like this, ultra cool guy who's just like, oh, yeah. Follow me if you want to, dude, but I'm not going to give you anything for it.
Because I look like you want to look. I fuck like you want to fuck.
Yep. I love that bit at the beginning where they look at Edward Norton's apartment and they deconstruct his apartment into an IKEA catalogue. I think that's really clever, that.
I love that bit for the backing music as well. It's so great. I mean, the Dust Brothers who did the music for it.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic score, so to speak, for the entire film. But we'll speak a bit more about that later. But yeah, I think that scene, the way they deconstruct into the IKEA catalogue is very well done.
Yeah, it's very clever because it shows the mindset of this person that's got nothing to do in his life apart from his job and buy useless crap off IKEA. And all he has in his fridge is condiments.
Yeah.
Which is just like, oh God, that really is a sad life. So through a series of misadventures, Edward Norton's character then goes to live with Tyler Durden in this dilapidated, horrible place in Paper Street, opposite the old factories, and it is just really, really run down. And I suppose at this point it's worth talking about the other stream. So you've got Edward Norton's character who can't sleep, who's advised to go, if you want to see real pain, pop down to the Men Surviving Cancer support groups. And he's got 2 lives at this point, or he's got 3. He's got work, he's got these survivor counseling groups, and then he's got the world of Tyler Durden. And those support groups are incredibly well done.
There's a lot. I think there's some learnings from 7 in there, because I think the way it's shot, and the silver tint that's put on the film is there to bleach out the colours is very for me reminiscent of 7.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the way it's shot as well, it's very reverential. Particularly the bit, there's a character called Chloe, who's a woman who's at the end of her life with cancer, and that is what she says isn't very reverential, but the way that scene is shot, until she gets too carried away and grabs the microphone, there's feedback and all that. But you've got these support groups, and one thing that caught me, and I've noticed it before, but it really stood out last night, was Meatloaf plays a character called Bob, who has gynecomastia following testicular cancer. Gynecomastia is male breasts.
Bob had bitch tits.
Yeah, thank you for the sample. I think that really sums it up, thanks. But there's a scene where Edward Norton's character leans against his chest, and as he's doing this, and it's this realization for Edward Norton that he can grieve and cry and relax, you've got this Gregorian chant going over that scene, and then as he pulls his face back, he's left the Shroud of Turin in tears on Bob's shirt, and I just thought that was really clever.
Nice touch.
That is a really,
I hadn't noticed that. That's good.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice touch, that. So yeah, so he's got these 3 strands, and then who does he meet in one of the support groups?
The wonderful Marla.
Marla, yeah. Come on, tell us about Marla Singer then.
There's only one line that I want to quote. But
you can quote that at the appropriate time. Tell us more about Marla Singer.
Marla Singer is at that time, I remember the sort of girl that was put on the pedestal by guys was the sort of manic pixie type girl. And that's what a lot of the sort of heroine type things were in it. She's the anti-heroine. She's the complete opposite of that. She is has her own form of psychosis. She is unhinged. doesn't care.
Yeah.
She's the completely anti-heroine.
Yeah.
But yet seems to be Ed Norton's savior. And I think her character is brilliant because once you know the ending and you go back and watch it, the main parts where it's evident there is something not right between Ed Norton and Brad Pitt is through Marla's character.
Yeah.
And I think she's an extremely important character. And I wouldn't even say she's a supporting actress. I'd say she's probably one of the lead roles. I'd say there's three leads.
Yeah.
Ed Norton, Brad Pitt, and Helena Bonham Carter, who
The
I
thing
think
is,
plays that role blindingly.
Yeah, the film wouldn't work without Marla Singer.
Not at all.
It just wouldn't work. You can have all of the twists around the Fight Club or Project Mayhem, but without Marla is the true defining moment in Edward Norton's mind that he goes, "Oh shit," and that's because of Marla. You know, she's an outstanding character. The fact that she's got the stones to walk into men surviving testicular cancer and sit there smoking, it's just like I remember watching it the first time going, you can't do that, you know. But then she says, what is it, I've got more right to be there than you have, because I haven't got any balls, you know. And he just like
it's just, she goes to every cancer support group, she sits there smoking, and the time you realize she's really got into him, it got hooks into him, is when Ed Norton does this part of this sort of guided meditation that they do at some of the support groups. And his one is he ends up in an ice cave with a penguin who tells him to slide. And as we know, the fun fact from that is all the frozen breath that comes out is from
Titanic. It's leftover special effects from Titanic. Hey, if you can save yourself a few quid, why not?
Yeah. But the one that always got me is when he goes into his cave and instead of the penguin telling him to slide, he turns around and there's Marla sat and she's just puffing on a cigarette, turns to him and goes, slide. Just exhales cigarette smoke. And he's just like, brilliant. It's just brilliant. She's just superb.
I think the absolute model of just how low they've become as characters from using these support groups is where they're trading off the illnesses and diseases. You know, you can't have bowel cancer, I need bowel cancer. You can have blood-borne cancers on a Monday and every other Sunday, and you think to yourself, Jesus Christ. You know, you can actually imagine there are people out there in this world that do that. That, you know,
probably are.
That are just tourists, as they're called in the film, that you know, that go around these support groups feeding off the grief. But doing that allows Edward Norton's character to sleep, and that's an important part of the film, because obviously his lack of sleep is what's driving his psychosis at the beginning of the film. I keep referring to him as Edward Norton's character because he isn't officially given a name. I think in the film it's called the narrator, because he is his voice narrates certain parts of the film. The argument is that his name is Jack because in part of the film, in the Paper Street house, there are books labeled Jack's, I am Jack's, or I am Jack's. And Edward Norton referred to the character as Jack in the director's commentary. So, you know, it could be Jack, it could be narrator, but I prefer to just say Edward Norton's character. So you've got this relationship between Tyler Durden, Edward Norton's character, and Marla's character, which becomes quite sexualized between Tyler Durden and Marla. There's a real good sequence using bullet time from The Matrix, which puts together several thousand images of them having rumpy pumpy. But the bit that made me chortle is when Edward Norton goes out and he's complaining about the noise, and Brad Pitt comes out and he's got a rubber glove on. And you're just thinking to yourself, what the fuck have you been doing? What have you been doing that requires a single rubber glove? You know,
but that's Tyler Durden's character throughout. It's that bit where he's reading the I am Jack's colon. Oh yeah, I am Jack's colon. I get cancer. I kill Jack.
Yeah.
And he's riding around on a bicycle.
Yeah.
In a dressing gown, and then just hits a pile of them and flies off.
Yeah.
And there's so many little bits of Brad Pitt's character that are hilarious because he's just doing stuff that you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
The whole film is built around haikus, isn't it? It's built around these small sayings. You know, you are not a beautiful or unique snowflake. You know, on a long enough timeline, everyone's chance of survival is 0. You know, and I think that's better than script in some point. You know, have somebody say that, which makes you think, which makes you react to it. Yeah. So they're in Paper Street, and they go on an excursion to go and find out. Well, Tyler already knows how to make soap, but he's going to teach Edward Norton how to make soap. So they go to the local cosmetic surgery depot, and he says that human fat makes the best soap. So they hop the wall and take these bags of human fat out of the medical waste bin. And it's fairly grim. You know, you've got these big medical waste bags, transparent. They wouldn't be really, but for the sake of a film, they're transparent. And it's all kind of like sloshing around like some thick wallpaper paste. That's bad enough. But then one of the bags catches on the barbed wire and splits open. And it's like, oh, God, no, I can't look at that. I can't look at that. It's disgusting.
But the part of that always gets me is because Ed Norton's on the top and it splits, and it's starting to break open, and Brad Pitt runs underneath it with his arms open to try and catch it all. It just slops everywhere, and you're like, it's just covered in.
Yeah, that's very, very deliberate directing. That, So they're teaching him how to make soap, but the fights are going on around, and the fights are becoming more aggressive. One of the bits that we haven't talked about, which is, I think it's the most violent part of the film. I think it's more violent than the beating that he gives Angel, is when Lou comes round. The original Fight Club is held under a bar that's owned by a guy called Lou. And one night, Lou and one of his heavies turns up to say, "Hey, what's all this? You know, aren't I getting a payment for this? Blah 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 blah." And proceeds to start kicking the leather out of Brad Pitt, saying, "Can you hear me?" And he's going, "No." So he hits him again. Still not getting it. Hits him again. Got it. No, it's gone. Hits him again and gives him a proper pasting. But then, well, this is the bit of Brad Pitt's character then just pushes Lou onto the floor and basically vomits the blood from all of his wounds all over this poor guy, saying, "Do we have a deal, Lou? Can we have the room for free, Lou?" And he's, I just think it was horrible, that bit.
It is the bit that always stuck with me and did when I watched it again last night, is Brad Pitt's laughing.
Yeah.
It's a real sort of Jack in the Box type of laugh, and it's detached and weird and manic, completely manic. But every time he's punching him, he just starts laughing. It's really unnerving and deeply unsettling.
I think it's I think that laugh was then I suspect that part of that laugh was then used into like Pennywise and the Joker.
There is that, there is that kind of,
because there is that complete lack of sanity in that laugh.
There's lack of anything. It's empty and psychotic. It's completely detached.
But so you can kind of see why, if somebody's not watching the film properly, if they're not paying attention, why they might think it is just about fighting. Because at the halfway point in the film, there is a lot of fighting going on, but it is about the undercurrent, the other stories where the film truly grows. the start of Project Mayhem, I always find amusing, where they bring these new recruits in and give them the homework of trying to start a fight with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the great music to that bit.
Oh, that's one of my favorite.
Jovial, happy music.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite musical cues in a film ever. So I think it's not a priest, is it? Or is it a priest? Yeah, it's a priest. Walks past the guy doing
sprays with water with a hose.
Yeah, doing a car wash, and he sprays him and goes, you can't do that. And he keeps spraying to the point where the priest punches him and then runs off. But you've got this like almost carnival music playing over. I just think it's genius.
The one out of that set piece that gets me is when he clotheslines the car salesman down behind the car, and you just see his legs go up and his shoe just go flying up into the air.
Yeah. All that mist really was one of those comedy moments. Whoop,
it really was. But that is with the carnival sort of style music. It is a very much that is a laughter part, because it's been quite. It's not light-hearted, but it's unsettling to watch on a psychological perspective. And then you get this bit of, you need to go and start a fight with someone, but everyone's having such a crap time trying to do it because no one wants to engage. Because no one wants there to be violence. But anyone that's involved in Project Mayhem is there for violence and dystopia. It's just, it's another counterpoint to what's going on in society.
Yeah, and that's nicely earmarked by the use of different colours. So if you look at Edward Norton character in work, his work environment is very fluorescent. It's very brightly lit. It's all whites and blues and greys. But then you get into the Paper Street House and into the Project Mayhem world. It's almost like neon and dark, and it's really what you might think of, like, a punk kind of thing.
Yeah, actually, that punk is probably the best way to describe the whole film, I would say.
Yeah, but not punk as in punk rock, as in, nobody cares. But I think that energy that punk had around, they didn't like the system, and the whole point of Project Mayhem is to break the system.
Because interestingly, to go on about the music a little bit, is when the film starts, I'd forgotten how it just starts and hits you right in the face.
Yeah.
There's for a title sequence to go back a number of steps, but for a title sequence, there's no sort of nice orchestral lead up and the titles. It's just, it does that, and it has that real sort of Stooges energy to it, that punk sort of sound. But the only songs that are used in it is they're few, but the one that really stuck with me is because I'm a big Tom Waits fan. And the moment they go into Lou's bar is you've got a real dirty electric track from Tom Waits playing. So again, it's that real dirty feeling. But the music is so powerful in the film throughout. And I mean, just us talking about how it, just for a very short sequence where they're told to go and start a fight, the music is a huge character in that itself.
Oh, definitely.
And the music throughout is another character. I don't think it's independent of the film. It's not like a score to underline the film. It drives the film and it drives the characters forward.
Yeah, it's the second narrator. Because starting off as aggressively as it did, you tend to find that when you go to see a film in the cinema or you watch it at home, but particularly in the cinema, you're just settling into your chair and you just, you've got through the, age rating distributed by, but then it goes, dun, 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 dun. So straight away you're on your heels and you don't know where the film's going to go from there. It's very rare that a film opens so aggressively on the ears, and the visuals that go with that are, well, it's Fincher's first foray into a microscopic level of detail and then coming away from it or traveling through it. In this case, he's coming out of the neurons of the brain right through to the barrel of a gun, for us to see Edward Norton's character with a gun in his mouth saying, with a gun in your mouth, you talk only in vowels, which I thought was really clever because, oh, 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 oh. Really good.
I mean, they're very, on things like that, they're very lucky with the source material. Because
hugely lucky, yeah.
Chuck Palahniuk's book is fine work alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've got some great source material to pull lines like that from.
Yeah, and that the idea of for the book came from when he was being beaten up.
Yeah,
yeah, he got beaten up one day and just saw how casual people were around him as it was happening, and I thought, oh, it's almost like people are spectating. So you know, it's yeah, but I think that you're right. The music is another character, another lead character, and it really does. Even if it's just very quietly in the background, just nudging you along, just giving you a little bit of a gentle push. This isn't a film which is, in my opinion, it doesn't hang on massively important performances from the actors. I think it's the content. I think the actors all do a really good job, but it's what's happening around them. The film is about that, not about performances.
I think it's an ensemble rather than individual actors.
Yeah.
So that, like I was saying, there's no real lead actor, so to speak. Well, apart from Ed Norton, Brad Pitt, and I've thrown Helena Bonham Carter in there. I think those are the key ones. But every character within it has an extremely important part to the story arc, to narrative, everything. That I think it's one of those films that is, if they did a best Oscar for ensemble cast, that should be it, because I don't think any one person is particularly standout. I know people have said it was, something that propelled Ed Norton's career, and for Brad Pitt it was a real standout piece, but I think they're all playing off each other and worked together as a whole rather than an individual.
Yeah, I think it came to Brad Pitt. I was looking at his filmography last night, and between Seven and Fight Club, he had something like 8 films out in 4 years. So I think he was well and truly on the ascendancy. And I think the film the film ultimately was marketed as a Brad Pitt film, even though it was an ensemble piece. And it more than probably got greenlit from a development point of view as a Brad Pitt film. But I think you're right. I think it certainly helped Edward Norton's star rise. It's a shame that his star hasn't continued to rise at that trajectory, because he, in my opinion, is a really, really good actor. But he seems to have plateaued off somewhat. The last thing I saw him in was Knives Out 2, Glass Onion, which was, in my humble opinion, nowhere near as good as Knives Out. It just felt like a sequel for sequel's sake.
I think he took some missteps. Hulk was a misstep.
Oh yeah.
And his unfortunate locking in with Paramount that resulted in him hamming his way through the Italian Job remake because he didn't want to be there. And my God, he showed that he didn't want to be there.
Well, he just
I think probably, it probably knocked him. Maybe personally, don't know, can't speak for him, don't know anything about it, but it maybe knocked him there, but also could have knocked Hollywood from wanting to take him on.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he did a film for Spike Lee called The 25th Hour, which is absolutely bloody brilliant film. And the cast in that is insane. When you look at them now, you think, well, you couldn't afford to do that film now purely on salaries alone. But that really showed how good an actor he is, that film, and it's just a pity that he didn't get the opportunity to carry that on. I think the last thing I saw him in that was good was a film he directed himself called Motherless Brooklyn.
Yes, yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
yes,
where he played a private detective with Tourette's. Yeah, nowhere near as funny as it sounds. It's not, it sounds like a comedy tagline, doesn't it? Detective, bitch.
You're under arrest, motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose the other thing that it marked as well was one of Bruce Willis's last acting performances.
Yeah.
Yeah. But poor old Bruce, he was reduced to 3 or 4 lines in his last 20 films, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
So it's funny how when we watch Fight Club at 99, 25 years ago, how it still resonates today. And I think it actually resonates a little bit more today.
Interesting. I had the same question running through my mind when I was watching it last night.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be dated? And I watched it. No. To me, it wasn't dated. It's as relevant now. Some of it is a little, okay, that was of a time, but as a whole, I think we've cyclically started to go back into the anti that nihilism that was there.
Yeah, there's a lot of foreshadowing in it for me. It's almost as if I don't take this with a pinch of salt. Don't take this too seriously, but the destructive power of Project Mayhem. These people coming together. Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of Twitter. Because Twitter, because I refuse to call it X, because X is a stupid name. But Twitter started as like-minded people wanting to talk about things that they enjoyed and shared, and then it became destructive almost overnight, and now is almost, well, I don't know what percentage, but it's propagated by fake news, bot farms, people that don't exist, and just shite. And there's a lot of that in Project Mayhem, and destroy the system, infiltrate, get in there. I suppose you could say the same for Facebook as well. Is Project Mayhem the blueprint for social media?
Well, I would put money on it that there is a Twitter account that's called something like Jack Smirking Revenge or Jack's colon, and someone's writing the story out there as Jack's colon.
Yeah. Or when
I get cancer, I kill Jack.
Yeah, when we first saw this film, I think it's fair to say that we were both completely smitten with it. It was something that I don't know whether it resonated for us in the fact that we wanted to destroy the system, but I just think as a piece of art, as a piece of entertainment, it really struck with us. And we had a piece of software called N-Track, and we would take samples out of it. Yeah, Taureg as well, yeah. And we would take samples out of the film, and we would write pieces of music, but using those samples. And even when we were doing that, I was looking at, can we get like an email address that goes with it so it makes us look a little bit more official? And every single connotation of Fight Club, Project Mayhem, Space Monkey, Tyler Durden was taken across the board. So there is no doubt somewhere a Twitter account which even to today is issuing little haikus, which is still preaching to the masses. Just waiting for some space monkey to jump up and go, "I'll do that."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I see what you mean. Project Mayhem would probably have moved online. No, probably it would have moved online. But yeah, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I think if you would actually, if it had been made today, Fight Club would have been a cyber terrorism, or Project Mayhem would have been cyber terrorism. It wouldn't have been actual destruction of property trying to attack records, because those records wouldn't exist in those buildings, and therefore no need. So it would have been that. But I think there's a lot of foreshadowing. Talking about how it was received then. So the critics, I think the critics quite liked it. You were going to say something, sorry, unless you were impersonating a goldfish. No. Go on.
I remembered what my train of thought was.
Yeah.
I think what it probably foreshadows probably the wrong way to put it, but hear me out,
Okay.
is that at that time, men didn't talk about things. We didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about emotion, and that is part of that narrative of the film. Is it's men having that space to not to be men. Or I think that at that time, that's probably what it was edging towards. But now, it's more acceptable for men to speak about mental health issues, to speak about when they're not feeling right, when there are problems.
Yeah.
And I think there are now more men's help groups that are a less violent or a non-violent version of Fight Club, shall we say?
Totally, yeah.
Where men do get together and have a cry and a chat without punching seven bells out of each other.
Yeah.
I think that side of it is where we are now.
Yeah.
I think where Fight Club was sort of expressing that, but to an extreme term, and then taking it into that Project Mayhem, which is a disenfranchisement of society and technology and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So I think there are some elements that, if you split apart Fight Club into bits, that's one element I think it was trying to tap into, was men. It doesn't sound very woke, but men's place in the world.
Yeah,
because
I would agree.
At that time, it was sort of now it's a big thing, but even then it was a sort of Britpop came out, lad culture, and then lad culture was starting to be squashed at that time, rightly so, because it was freaking ridiculous.
It was,
but then I think there was a where does a male place in society sort of sit? And it's still not worked out, and that's why we have Ken in Barbie and et cetera, because it's still not there. And we I think that is the part that probably cements it as a piece of art of its time.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a really good thought. That I like that. I
think my sociological essay for A-level sociology.
But you can mirror that in the fact that Edward Norton's character, with his insomnia and through using the support groups and opening up, has found a degree of solace. But then you get Tyler Durden, who says self-improvement is masturbation. His nihilistic view is that, no, you don't need to do all that. Just destroy something. Just go and wreck something, interfere with something, interrupt something, and that will give you that peace. So that's a really good thought. That I hadn't thought about that one. Yeah. So the critics enjoyed it. I think the marketing campaign killed it in the cinemas, although on a $63 million budget, which most probably was heavily shifted towards Brad Pitt's salary, it grossed $101 million. So that's not bad. But I think where Fight Club really benefited was from the birth of DVD. Because DVD became a mass format around 99, 2000, somewhere around about that period of time. And whilst I can't find some exact figures, from what I can find, it's made more than its cinematic gross in DVD sales.
Doesn't surprise me. That's where it hit it, because, like you say, the marketing campaign killed it. I remember that came out in the cinemas. No one I knew touched it because they're like, I don't want to see a film about fighting.
Yeah.
And then I watched it on DVD and I was like, it's totally not a film. This is one of the greatest pieces of cinema. Pizzas.
No pineapple.
I'll have a Fight Club with extra Space Monkey.
Hold the blood, please.
Yeah, I think... How'd you like it, Lou? I think, that's where it hit it, because people could sort of say, oh, well, I don't want to spend £7 on a ticket to the cinema, but I'll go and hire it from Blockbuster. Ironically, one of the places that was taken down by Project Mayhem.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll go and rent it from Blockbuster or buy it on DVD from play.com.
Yeah. Oh, those are the days. Play.com, bloody hell. That's a name from the past. I think you're right. And I think because Fincher actually shot some trailers for the film, which were nixed by the studio. One was Edward Norton and the other one was Brad Pitt. And I think one of them was him reading out the aircraft safety instructions.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's a scene where he says, you're on a plane, look how calm everybody is, look at the diagrams, everyone's smiling, the oxygen gets you high, everyone's calm as a Hindu cow. you know, and it's,
I love
yeah,
that line.
it's a great line, that, and I think that's where the film company definitely got it wrong. They bottled it, whereas Fincher got the pitch of the film exactly right. And I think is you said last night, is this peak Fincher? Is this where Fincher's hit his stride? Because this is the first time, and I know I've said this when we've looked at Alien 3, 7 and The Game. I had a slight criticism about Fincher and female characters. Marla Singer is a superbly written character. You know, I don't want to call her a female character. She is female in the film, but her gender is irrelevant because she's so well written. She's so manipulative, and so, well, she's as bad as they are in her own little way. Yeah, but she is so well written and so well acted and so well directed. I think it more than probably is peak Fincher phase 1.
Interesting. I'd also interestingly say, could any other actress have played Marla Singer? And I genuinely can't think of anyone that could.
Well, you know who
time.
almost did it?
No.
Courtney Love.
Oh yes, that rings a bell. I can see why, but she would have hammed the heck out of that.
Well, the thing is that if you looked at Courtney Love in '99, she was Marla Singer.
Yeah,
yeah, and I think she was going out with Edward Norton at the time, and I think that's why that was almost a thing. But Helena Bonham Carter is just supreme. I haven't seen her do anything better since.
And quite frankly, one of the takeaway lines from the film is one that she made up.
Go on, you've been wanting to say it all night.
The great line, which was improvised. She was just told to say something.
Actually, no, it wasn't improvised. I'll tell you the true story of this. You tell me what the line is, and I'll tell you the true story behind it.
Post-coitus, they roll back on the bed, and she pulls the drag on a cigarette, and she says, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. It's so wrong. It's so wrong.
The thing that I'm a tiny bit concerned about that is I don't understand the American education system, but I don't think grade school is terribly old.
It's not good. No, it's not good. Yeah. It's not good.
So the original line was, and forgive me for this, it is a very, very harsh line. I want to have your abortion.
Oh my good Lord.
And the studio went absolutely apeshit. So Fincher said to them, okay, I'll replace it with a new line, but that's the line we're going to use. So then they went away and wrote, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. The studio went absolutely apeshit again. He went, you agreed. We're going to use the one I replaced it with. So I wonder whether he did that on purpose, because there was no way he was going to get the first line in the film. Ever.
No, there's no way that was going to get in.
No.
Oh my good Lord.
No.
Oh, not in America anyway.
That would have got it into trouble straight away. But that is, that sums up that relationship between Tyler Durden and Marla Singer. The fact that is how she feels of him. So yeah, it wasn't that well received it was by critics, but not by cinema audiences. It got quite a few awards around the going through the the shows for the actors and for the director, and then obviously the home DVD, Blu-ray, video releases did really good money for them. So as you get into the end of the film and you start to see how seriously Project Mayhem is kicking up, with the space monkey soldiers and the destruction of property, and it turns quite sinister, almost like a standard thriller from that point, with very little humor in it. It's almost as if there's been this conscious decision to say no more jokes. We're heading towards the end now. Although there is a fantastic fight scene in the underground car park between Edward Norton's character and Edward Norton's character, or Tyler Durden, where he just beats the crap out of himself.
And I love when they go to the security cameras and you just see it's Ed Norton with himself, dragging himself across the floor, throwing himself down the stairs.
Yeah, that's the one. The throwing down the stairs makes me go, ow, every time, because the stuntman that did that, he doesn't fall down the stairs. He actually launches himself down the stairs, and that looks like it hurt like an absolute bastard, that did. So we get to the big finale piece, and the big finale piece is in this under construction penthouse apartment with Tyler Durden and Edward Norton's character facing off. It's where the film starts with the gun in the mouth. Edward Norton's character pulls the trigger, shoots himself in the mouth, which comes out of his jaw. Brad Pitt's Tyler Durden dies, and then the Project Mayhem fireworks, the pyrotechnics, the destruction of all of the buildings start to the tune of
the Pixies, Where Is My Mind?
And could you have picked
absolutely brilliant?
Could you have picked a better song? No. Absolutely superb. Where is my mind? Indeed. After 2 hours of psychosis and split personalities and nihilism, it finishes with what is a moderately gentle song. You know, it's not the most aggressive song out there. Whilst and it's another city we don't get the name of, isn't it?
I was trying to figure this out throughout the film. What city is it actually based in?
Yeah.
And I took a stab at Chicago. I don't know why.
Yeah, I've always thought Boston, but I don't know why, because LA's too obvious.
LA's too obvious. It's definitely not New York.
Definitely not New York. But I wonder why Fincher did that again, and why he chose to not give it a location, as if the city doesn't matter. It's going to happen anyway.
It doesn't matter. Ambiguity doesn't matter where it's set. It's the same for every city across the world.
Yeah.
Or across America. It doesn't matter where it's set. It's boilerplate across the board.
Yeah. So we have the buildings coming down to the Pixies, Where's My Mind, and it's another case of Fincher picking a pop song, to close down a film over something that it just doesn't fit over. You know, Demolition, Where's My Mind, Heart's Filthy Lesson at the end of Seven. You know, he's really mastering that use of music coming in over visuals.
What I love about Where Is My Mind is, and I think because they've chosen that indie style, not indie style, it is indie, it's Pixies for goodness sake. Yeah. But the way it's shot in widescreen with Ed Norton and Marla together, and they put out their hands to hold each other's hand, and you've got this what is sort of a nice gentle song, with buildings going out. It just you just needed it to have "Wish You Were Here" written across the top,
a bit
in sort of like a postcard. Exactly like that.
That would have been
counterpoint of.
That would have been genius. That if he'd just gone the end. That would have been really good. That it's funny because he also at the end of Seven you have that very short monologue from Morgan Freeman where he says, some people think the world is worth fighting for. I agree with that. I agree with the first part. And then the music starts and Edward Norton says to Marla Singer just before the Pixies kick up, he says,
"You've met me at a very strange point in my life. It's a very strange time in my life." Guffed that one up.
Which is another great line to finish a film on.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Superb. Then kicks into the music and then kicks the film off. I think it is just about of its type, and there's not many films that fit into that type that are like it. I think it's just about the perfect film.
Oh, to me, it is. There's no point in that film I zone out or switch off, which I tend to do quite a bit, especially in my old years. But I think it just keep the energy of it, and the pace is perfection. I think I'm of that way inclined to find the subject matter of deep interest and the psychological and the psychosis and the neurosis and things like that. Because going back to Marla again, in her character, she does echo Edward Norton, where he's taken it to the extreme that he's invented a person.
Yeah.
But she is very much, her bravado, I think, is an act from the world that screwed her over.
Yeah, definitely.
And because when all she wants to be is loved.
Yeah.
She's in this what it looks like a very just a sexual relationship, but it's not. She actually yearns for someone and wants to be needed and loved by someone.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think Ed Norton needs that, and that's why he can sleep after those support groups, because he's needed and yearned by somebody there to by Meatloaf. So I think there is a synergy between those two characters, but Ed Norton's psychosis is just tipped too far because he's obviously an insomniac.
Yeah.
And he's just a very broken individual.
Yeah.
And they both, he says, you've met me at a strange point in my life. I think they met each other at the perfect point in each other's lives.
Yeah.
Which are also both a strange point in their life. So I think that's why they come together.
Yeah, because she saved him as much as he saved her. And I think one of the things that Fincher and the writers, because again, it was Andrew Kevin Walker was uncredited, or Kevin Andrew Walker, I always get his name wrong, sorry. He was uncredited on Fight Club again. There is no exposition. Marla is Marla because she is. Yeah. So it's a bit like John Doe. John Doe is John Doe because he is. And I love that in Fincher's work. I love the fact that he trusts us as an audience to accept a character. It's like if we walk into a room and we meet somebody for the first time, they don't shake our hand and go, right. So when I was 7, this happened to me. When I was 9, this happened to me. When I was 12, this happened to me. We don't get 15 minutes of exposition when we meet somebody. We have to accept them for who they are. And I think that's great writing and great directing. And I think weaker directors on weaker films actually do that, whether it be through flashback or a character talking about that character. You do know he had an awful childhood. You know, it's that kind of crap. And I love the faith that Fincher has in us as an audience. It's very similar to Stephen King. He has that faith in his readers that you are there.
I would say, sorry, but it's just reminding me, if you think about what you're saying there, that ties in, I've just realized it ties in very much with that last line from Ed Norton.
Yeah.
He's not just saying it to Marla Singer.
Yeah.
He's saying it to you as the audience.
Yeah.
Because that's why you don't have that exposition. You don't have the, oh, well, he had a tortured childhood. No, he's got to this point because of his job and his boss. And you don't have any of that. You meet him with a gun in his mouth. And the only exposition is actually how he got to that point with a gun in his mouth.
Which is the purpose of the film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's no BS before that.
And if you follow, and as we go through the series, we'll see this in the vast majority of Fincher's films. There is no exposition. He doesn't do it. He doesn't believe in it. You know, he might take the story back in time, for a scene or several scenes. I'm thinking about The Social Network, for example. He takes it back in time to tell a different part of the story, but he doesn't use exposition like some of the lesser directors out there. You know, I had the misfortune of watching Argyle yesterday. Feel free to listen to my mini pod review of it. That is the work of banality. You know, Matthew Vaughn had some promise as a director, but that film is just, I think I called it a flaccid belch. You know, it's just everything that Tyler Durden and Project Mayhem would stand against. You like that flaccid belch?
Flaccid. Oh, I love their third album.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ringworm.
The
new album from Flaccid Belch, Ringworm. It's everything that Project Mayhem would have stood against a $200 million film with no content apart from to create more money. They would have destroyed it. But I think you're right. I think it is peak Fincher, but I think it's peak Fincher phase one, because as you move, I think phase one more than probably finishes with Panic Room, and then he becomes a much more technical director after that. So you get these, and there is some of that in Panic Room, but these incredibly intricate set shots. You know, you look at some of the shots in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. You know, they are incredibly intricate shots. You know,
well, I think when we come to Panic Room, that's the springboard into that, because there's a lot, not a lot, but there are certain elements in Panic Room which we'll discuss that are technical shots that you're like, that's brilliant. Oh, he's done that. That's very clever. And I think that's where he's honing that art. And there's a little bit of in Fight Club, which when we speak about Panic Room, I'll probably hark back to, there's elements in Fight Club that you can see it sort of technically that have moved into Panic Room.
Yeah, I think with Fight Club is a very, watching Fight Club, where I think I think his intention when making Fight Club is to make it a very personal watching experience. You are watching the film, you are experiencing it, so it doesn't need lots of big, wide, intricate shots, because you're in there. You think about the fight scenes, you're in the middle of the fight scenes, you're moving around with them. There's not a lot of time when you're away from the characters.
No, but you're brought into the film because of the breaking of the fourth wall on a few occasions within the film.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got the narrator, that's breaking a fourth wall.
Yeah.
You've got the part where Brad Pitt turns to the camera when he's talking about the
cigarette burns.
When cigarette burns. Yeah. You've got the other part where he's talking, he goes straight up in the, I think, really freaking intense.
Yeah.
And he comes straight up to the camera, and the negative starts vibrating in the frame, and the sides come in, and that's insanely deep. And when he does it with Ed Norton again, is you've got that straight to camera in your face.
Yeah, but that's to you. That's just to you, because this is your story.
But that's it. It's breaking down the fourth wall again.
Because you're not unique. You are not a beautiful, unique snowflake. You know. I do think that Fight Club is almost a one-to-one film. This is our story for you, and it pulls you in.
Yeah. It is intimate. I'll give you that, because it's an unsettling film in many ways, but my God, it takes you on that journey, and I wanted to be there for every second of it.
Yeah, it's a great, great, great film. There is a Fight Club 2, which I can never pronounce his name, that Chuck wrote, which is done in a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no mention of that turning into a TV series or a film. Thank the Lord for that. So following on from something I did last week, I recommended a film, which is...
Oh, before we get onto that,
yeah,
I would just like to mention, going back to the music, something we completely missed, we talk about quite a bit, is what was meant to be the original score for the film.
Oh, was that 2 hours of guitars being tuned?
The band I love and the band Phil loves to hate.
I don't hate them. I just don't get them. It's not hate. Some of the songs I've heard, I've actually quite enjoyed. Some of the songs I've heard, I've gone straight over my head. And unfortunately, it tends to be the latter is in the majority. Yeah.
Brad Pitt's favourite band, and that's why he was championing for them to do it. And do you know what? I want to hear that soundtrack, because around that time, they were doing Kid A, Amnesiac. It was all their weird electronic stuff. So that would tie into what was going with Fight Club. I want that to be made. So that needs to be an album.
Was it recorded, or was it just muted and then it never happened?
Muted and then never happened, from what I'm aware, from what I've read. I don't know if it got to a stage where they'd recorded some demos and then it just was like, this ain't going to work. But I know there were conversations that happened. That's the sort of background I can find on it, because when that film came out, I was deep diving at that point as well, and just thinking, oh my God, if they made that with the stuff they're putting out at that time, which to me is sort of semi-accessible, not quite accessible period of music. Put down the guitars and picked up electronic instruments. Some of it's great.
Well, they don't need
I
tuning,
think
do they? So that's fine.
I think it's aged well because I really like it now. But I'd love to see what that soundtrack would have been, and what impact that would have had on the pace and narrative in the film. Because we've discussed about how music is another character within the film. And I think that is hacked it fully to Dust Brothers. It's just inspired and brilliant. And I wonder if Radiohead would have hit that, because I think, how would they have done that? I really would like to hear that, because Johnny Greenwood's scores for films are really good.
I'll give him that.
Really good.
Yeah.
But hearing them as a band put a soundtrack to that, I want to hear that album.
Okay. So a film recommendation based on somebody that was in last week's film and somebody that's in this week's film. So from last week's film, which was The Game, I've got Sean Penn. From this week's film, which is Fight Club, I've got Jared Leto. And it's a film called The Thin Red Line, which was Terrence Malick.
God, yes.
His first film in like 20 years or something. War film. Reasonably good. A little bit slow in parts, but not bad. So one of the questions that appears in Fight Club, Tyler Durden asks Edward Norton's character, if you could fight anybody, who would you fight? Now, I'm not advocating violence in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So this is a hypothetical, unless you really want to go and find them. If you could fight anybody, who would you fight?
Oh, I'm wrestling with the irony, with the choice I've made now.
You can have two if it makes it easier.
I think it would be quite a slow fight, but if we could pick two, I'd take Donald Trump and Boris Johnson.
If we're going to do two, I'll take Ken out of the Barbie films.
You'd be annihilated.
For what he... I don't know. I just don't get that character. Outside the demographic, blah, 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 blah.
You have no Kennedy.
And the second one, this is going to go down well. I was tossing up between whether it should be Matthew Vaughn or Kevin Feige, because they're two people. Matthew Vaughn for producing shit films, and Kevin Feige for ruining superhero films. Yeah. But I think I'm going to have to go for the person who cast the vote, which gave Everything Everywhere All at Once the Oscar for Best Film.
I would agree with you.
If it's a man or a woman, and apologies if it's a lady, I do not advocate hitting ladies. But whoever was the tipping vote that got that Matrix rip-off piece of shit to get the Oscar, I'm not advocating. Banshees of Inisherin should have got it for me all day long. Thought it was an infinitely better film, infinitely better acted. It was beautiful. It was poignant. It was all the things that you look for in a film. It wasn't a Matrix ripoff.
We could do a whole podcast on Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was just that made me angry.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I rewatched a film. Yeah. I can be like this sometimes. I can watch a film and go, I didn't enjoy that. I'm never going to revisit it. And I don't. I did it with Arrival, the Denis Villeneuve film. I watched it and didn't understand it. So I thought, well, it can't be me. It must be something wrong with the film. Watched it a second time, thoroughly enjoyed it. Still didn't understand it, but thoroughly enjoyed it. Watched it a third time, thoroughly enjoyed it. Still didn't understand it. I watched Dune again the other night because obviously Dune 2 is on its way out in a couple of weeks. First time I watched it, I was like, oh, yawn. I actually really enjoyed it second time. So, but I'm not doing that with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm not going back to it.
I'm not sitting through that again. No. I can't. No. I can't.
I'm just going to get a migraine like I did the first time I watched it. But that's, that's just, it's all subjective, isn't it? Whether it's a good film or a bad film. So thank you. What's next week's film? Test your knowledge. Oh, Rabbit in the Headlights.
Panic Room.
Well, it will be Panic
I want
Room.
to say Panic Room.
It is Panic Room. Yeah.
Can you sense the panic in my saying a Panic Room?
Yeah, Panic Room. Yeah, the Panic Room, which is
Panic Room.
And you know, the one thing which will always sum up Panic Room for me is AOL 56K modems, dial-up tone, trying to download it. Not that we advocate downloading copies of films off the internet. But
I went to the cinema to watch that one.
Oh, so did I.
I went to the cinema. Yeah.
Did
we go together?
I know we have been to the.
Please hold whilst Phil and Daniel rack their grey brain cells to find out if they actually watched a film together in the 2000s.
Yeah, I think we might have.
I think we might have.
Yeah, I think we might have. Yeah, I have this vague recollection of you in a box of popcorn. And saying,
that doesn't necessarily take that to a cinema.
Put your hand in the popcorn, deeper. What's that at the bottom of the box?
I remember I was a film promoter at the time as a part-time job whilst I was at university. Yeah. And I think that was one of the ones I promoted and got free tickets for. It was great being a film promoter at that time. I used to get to go to screenings when there was no one else in the cinema. It was lovely.
Cool.
Yeah, I have a feeling that was it, but I don't know if I took you along for the ride.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure I'm comfortable where this is going. Right,
Jack's colon, take us out.
Yeah, so I am Tyler's Durden, and opposite me was Jack's total lack of surprise. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate each and every one of you. We shall see you next time for a bit of Panic Room. See ya.
Goodbye, you unique, beautiful snowflakes.